Hey guys, what's up and welcome to a new, just in general video. Today, it's going to be obviously a Thanksgiving day, so happy Thanksgiving to all my Americans. But today, because the market's closed, I felt like let's do a bonus video. I'm going to go over all of the Max 7 stocks, including AMD and Netflix actually. So pretty much everything on this list right here. And I'll give you, quick thoughts on all of them. And yeah, I figured, why not? If you enjoy, don't forget to hit that like button. But let's just get into it, guys. I have a private YouTube membership. Link is below if you'd like to join me. Again, where I share all my thoughts, post updates with my members every single day. So again, we'd love to have you there. Link is below. But let's just start with Tesla, and we'll work our way down slowly but surely. Again, quick thoughts, nothing too incredibly, intense. But anyways, jumping into Tesla. So going forward on Tesla stock, how does Tesla stock look from here? Well, obviously I already made a very kind of in-depth video, but for the most part, Tesla stock is looking kind of bullish, to be completely honest with you, but it's also approaching major resistance. And this is where things will start getting interesting. Simply put, again, to make this as simple and fast as possible, we have this trendline resistance right here. That's going to be a major resistance. If it happens on Friday or Monday, it'll be 435 to 430. That sort of $5 range. Mid to low 430s will be this level to watch right around here. This is going to be something that, can pose some significant resistance. And we have that 4-hour SMI now approaching near the top, which for the most part, this indicator has been fairly decent on a Tesla stock when it comes to bottoms and tops, unless of course we enter a parabolic move up or down, which happens about 5 to 10% of the time. But the other sort of 90-ish% of the time, this thing is pretty damn good. So this is going to be the main level to watch right now for Tesla stock. If we do find areas here of rejection, if we have problems here, if this 4-hour SMI over here coming up to the top is also going to be a problem and all this confluence shows rejection, there is a good chance Tesla rejects from here and at the very least comes back down to test this bottom trend line once again. Obviously, until one of these is lost, we don't really have a true direction from bullish or bearish perspectives. Broken above, I do think Tesla at the very least will retest the high 460s, potentially honestly opening up the doorways for going to retest all-time highs, if not making all-time highs. But breaking this lower trend line will bring us back down to about, we'll say 360s, give or take, of course. And that's going to be the main thing to watch out for there moving forward. Nvidia is in a bit of a pickle here for sure. It's kind of in limbo land where it's now getting that first time in a long time kind of bearish crossover on the exponential moving averages. It was bullish for honestly most of the year, really after like March, I think like that. It was pretty much bullish this entire time. Now we're getting that first sort of momentum, weakness, if you will, coming into the stock where it just doesn't feel like the bulls are here like they were before, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It feels a bit less bullish overall. So if we get a rejection around sort of this mid to low 180s, expect a potential rejection and a move back down to maybe even the low mid 160s, we'll say, which is going to be where we bounced off of here. So, 165, 167, something like that. That is a very real possibility. If the bulls really want to regain momentum, there's two things they need to do. Either right now, they need to start reclaiming this low to mid 180s, and that'll be very bullish. Or if we make a move down here, then from there, we can actually round up and look pretty bullish as well. But ultimately, I'd want to see this trend line broken because that tells me that this kind of, downtrend, if you will, that we are in is most likely finished. But until this trend line is broken, I would expect Nvidia to keep bouncing and ultimately heading lower. Best case scenario from a bullish perspective, or a greedy bullish perspective, is Nvidia makes its way all the way down to about the 150s, where I think the risk reward down there will be absolutely phenomenal. But whether or not we get that opportunity is a different story entirely. So in my opinion, watch for this major trend line to break before we can really start signaling stronger bullish momentum returning once again. AMD, actually arguably kind of in a similar situation as Nvidia. I would argue it's a little bit stronger actually. So we had that 4-hour SMI near the bottom once again. And again, the SMI is usually pretty good, right? We got the 4-hour SMI near the bottom. And then of course we ended up bouncing off of that so far, holding some pretty key levels. And now AMD is entering, an interesting position, right? Where this trend line you can see is constantly rejecting price over and over and over. We pretty much closed right at it. So as long as we don't get a substantial gap down, pretty much Friday, really, AMD is arguably breaking this downtrend line, which is the first step of potential bullish recovery. The second step, in my opinion, is going to be reclaiming this sort of mid to low 220s, because that's where we have obviously previous support, now arguably resistance coming in. And of course, we have the exponential moving averages sitting there as resistance. So this is step number one, which is breaking this trend line. Step number two is coming back up and turning this area back into support. And from there, I think we can go higher. However, if we check from here, we can easily get one more move back down and retest the lows down all the way over here. But the weekly on an AMD is also not looking too shabby. We're coming right back into that bullish EMA cloud. And we also have this longer weekly kind of trend line support, also not too far below. So the ideal scenario for me personally to get a really juicy entry is a rejection here, come back down, retest this trend line, come back down to retest these levels down here one more time. And I think from there we head out. If we want to be bullish sooner and faster, it'll be something like this. Microsoft, what's Microsoft telling us? Microsoft, on the weekly, for instance, it's looking kind of mediocre, but there is potential confluence around this area here where we had a massive pivot point right around this sort of 470s-ish region. We came right back down to it, and now we're sort of bouncing it off of it so far. I wouldn't say Microsoft looks incredibly bullish though, because there is this risk of this kind of double top scenario playing out that is so far at risk unless Microsoft can essentially reclaim pretty much 500. So that is kind of a risk here where, it's just gonna be a nice little bounce up to here and then we ultimately head lower, right? That there is potential of that. Of the Mag 7s and, essentially the list of stocks you see here, it's probably one of the weaker ones in my opinion. It's not, aside from this one kind of random burst of momentum, it's not a very strong momentum stock either. So it's just kind of like, it's kind of a loosey-goosey stock. It doesn't really truly go anywhere for a while. So honestly, I expect a lot of chop on this stock, right? If we lose the sort of 470s, most likely we revisit 450 or so. But yeah, until the stock reclaims 500 and holds it once again, there is still significant risk that this is just a bearish retest into lower. So not the sexiest looking one in the world. Amazon actually looks decent, but I think it will look better once this trend line is broken here as well. So Amazon is one of my personal favorite stocks right now, overall going to next year, mainly because I think this is this is the only stock that hasn't really truly had a massive run. Like pretty much every other Mag 7 stock, honestly, even Microsoft with this run here had phenomenal runs, right? Every single one of them, did something pretty nice, essentially. Google especially lately, right? Amazon's the only one that's just kind of chilling, really just not doing anything ultimately. So there's two things I'm looking at on Amazon. First and foremost, it's in this very large, massive rising channel, right? Technically speaking, as long as we continue rising within this channel, we could revisit almost to the 280s sometime by early next year, maybe February or something like that, right? The first maybe third of next year, yeah, we can easily see Amazon in the upper 200s. That's a very real possibility. But there's two levels I'd really want to see broken. First and foremost, I'd want to see this level down here defended, which is around the 210s, if you will. But more importantly, I'd want to see about the low 230s broken again, because that would make Amazon break above this trend line and break above resistance that we ended up getting above on earnings, smack down below. But, getting back above it and turning it into support, maybe a little bull flag here would be very, very bullish. I think Amazon will begin its run. Can take some time. We can still kind of, dance around this area for a little bit before we find some true momentum, but that's going to be something to watch out for moving forward. Apple's still one of the more bullish stocks of the Mag 7s, absolutely, right? Had a massive kind of rounding bottom pattern over here, broke out, and it's just continuing the trend. Pretty much the way I look at these kind of stocks for Apple and Google, you ride the trend, you ride the EMAs, right? As long as the EMAs continue being bullish, the stock is probably still bullish. Had this kind of, arguably a little, messy, but bull flag nonetheless. So it's looking pretty good. 4-hour SMI is now approaching the top, so we could find some resistance up here around 280. So, we can get a resistance up here, maybe come back down slowly, come back down to retest the 270s potentially. But as long as the EMAs are bullish, pretty much anytime the SMI gets to the bottom of the range, that's just another opportunity until the EMAs start flipping bearish once again. But for now, it's looking pretty strong until proven otherwise. Google, kind of the same story as Apple. Is pretty much unstoppable, right? It is extremely overextended, so I wouldn't be surprised to see a small little pullback back down to about, maybe 300, closer to 300, 305, something like that. But as you can see, any pullback has been setting up essentially bullish continuation patterns, rising triangle pattern here, bull flag here. Maybe we get another massive kind of bull flag here as well. But until this really starts to fall apart, maybe this trend line is lost or the exponential moving averages start flipping bearish. Again, same idea as Apple. Anytime it gets pulled into the exponential moving averages and the 4-hour SMI comes near the bottom, until proven otherwise, it continues to be an opportunity and the stock continues trending higher. Meta obviously had a massive fall on earnings. Just finally broke that 9 exponential moving average for the first time and it saw that little pop. But it is going to most likely find some resistance around here. This area up around the sort of 630s region was resistance here, support here, resistance and support over here. Some support here, some resistance here. There's a good chance we find some resistance here because again, the stock has entered a severe correction off of the earnings. So, stocks like this usually take a little bit of time to kind of develop something and set up, if you will, kind of base, if you will, before they really can find their footing and head higher. So this one will take some more time, right? Expect continued chop, maybe a quick little push, slightly higher, maybe 650s best case, but most likely a rejection from there. And then it'll most likely continue basing, forming some kind of pattern, and this will probably take a little bit of time to really just base around this general vicinity until we see a bigger picture. But on the weekly, I was telling members how I personally believe that one of these two zones is going to be the bottom. So let's continue monitoring that. The stock is still overall pretty weak though, right? You know, it's not the strongest stock in the world until we start reclaiming key moving averages, essentially. So it is still on the weaker side of things overall. But like I said, you know, stocks like this, you shouldn't, I mean, not financial advice, of course, I'm not a financial advisor, but these kind of stocks, you shouldn't obviously worry too much about long-term, unless Meta just pulls a metaverse type of thing like it did here, obviously, then, you know, you never know really with Zuckerberg sometimes. But overall, it's looking pretty decent. It's not looking that decent, but it's like, it's looking decent in the sense that it's a big, it's a mega cap. It's probably going to be fine compared to like if this was a small cap, probably not as fine, right? There's definitely substantially higher risk that it never recovers, but I mean, let's be real here. I mean, there's a good chance this recovers. Could be printing a large a bear flag though. So if we get a rejection and then go something like this, print a large bear flag and make one more low down to about 560. And then I think from there we base and head higher. That is a possibility that I'm watching for. And then Netflix, definitely also one of the weaker stocks for now, unfortunately, but it is setting up something that I personally like to see. So go to the weekly time frame. I do want to see strength on Friday. If we can close Friday above 107 or higher, I would be very bullish actually. Because then we close back above the 50 moving average on the weekly, which usually you can see it bounces off of several times, right? The one time it closed below it, ended up getting it back the next week. And this is that next week. So I'd want to see some strength going into Friday, which would be very positive developments. But there's a few interesting confluences I see on Netflix. First and foremost, it is setting up, in my opinion, what looks to be a very large weekly bull flag, massive move up, kind of bull flag right into that 618 Fibonacci. So that's really good. If we lose the very, very low 100s, I think a move back down to about these green Fibonacci's sort of around $90 per share, unfortunately, is a possibility. So I'll continue watching that to see if that develops. But there is confluence around this region that this could be the bottom and it bounces from here pretty nicely. But ultimately, we need to see a break out of this bull flag and that upper trend line to see strength continue on the stock and to really get that bull trend, you know, reignited, if you will. Because as of right now, it is, you know, a knife, but it is at major support where this could be shaping up to be the bottom. We'll have to see how that plays out in the days and potentially weeks to come. But the other confluence I like to see on Netflix that's pretty interesting is going to be when this correction happened right here, Netflix from up here at around 106 down to here at around what, 82-ish, corrected about 23%, about, give or take. Again, I'm not, you know, labeling it to perfection, but about 23% correction, pretty quick. But it was about 23%. This from up here to down here, take it out, check it out. Pretty much 23% as well. So is that just going to be a similar sort of, you know, kind of algorithmic pattern, if you will, of a correction? Obviously, this one's slower and longer, but the percentage is the exact same. Is that going to be another, you know, will that be something similar? Is this going to be just another 23% correction into higher? I don't know. But like I said, there's a lot of confluence around this area. So I do think that there's a high chance that this area is going to bottom out and the stock will rebound pretty nicely. But like I said, if we lose $100 per share, I think we head down to about $90 per share, where I think the stock has an extremely high chance to bottom out. So if not here, then most likely here. But I expect one of these two to be a significant bottom for the stock and the stock to ultimately head significantly higher going into next year. Not financial advice, of course, but that's it. That's all this, you know, this video. I want to make a quick video talking about all the Mac 7s, give you my thoughts about them and the slightly mini Mac 7s, like AMD and Netflix. I view them as like mini Mac 7s. In my heart, they're Mac 7s, so Mac 9, I guess you can say. But yeah, let me know if you like this video. And yeah, thought I'd figure it out, you know, make this bonus video, give you guys some thoughts on this general kind of, you know, broad stocks over here, the kind of the big dogs, if you will, of the markets. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.